total. You can see here, 666. And I've been saying for the past couple of days, I think she knows they're coming. The kids that work here have said she's always way more active the closer it gets to Halloween.
I see a tall figure, about this high. Absolutely definitive as, like, humanoid.
Oh, shit. Hell no!
That was mean.
So that was not on before.
That was not on.
Why are these things moving? Do you see that?
Here.
Galveston is considered by many to be one of the most haunted cities in the country.
Whoa!
Look at
What the
that.
hell is that?
Did you put that wine glass up there?
It's not.
Oh, it's moving.
Remember that one scene that everybody talks about?
And which one?
Terrifier 2, the bedroom scene.
Yeah, I'm never gonna forget that. That specific scene constantly like
Plays in your mind,
yeah, bro.
And the way that she was ripped, like,
Her arms were ripped off, her scalp was skinned off, bleach on her soul. Even though I know it's fake, just can't handle the gore.
that scene scarred a lot of people. But the director, right, when he was trying to think of ways that art was gonna murder people, he was trying to get inspiration from medieval torture methods back in the day, right? Then he came across this picture of what used to be a body on a bed. How he described it was, it didn't even look human, bro. Come to find out that that picture was a victim of Jack the Ripper,
The infamous
serial killer that was never found.
from the UK.
Yes. So he got inspiration from Jack the Ripper. He tried to like think of a way how that could have happened, because I'm gonna show you the picture.
Fuck.
Yo, I don't think you're ready for this, bro.
I'm not ready. What the fuck?
The original picture's black and white. This is the colorized version.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's the original picture right there.
Yeah. Yo, let me know if you guys like that shit. Like, I know a lot of people are into the whole gore stuff. And shout out to the TikToker who I learned that from. It's Jiggy Saws.
A woman was found violently murdered in a luxury spa resort in the Hamptons. Who on earth could have done this and why? It was the 28th of October 2024 when police in New York made a horrific discovery. In a stunning luxury resort and spa in New York, a woman was found deceased. Now, the resort, it's reported online, is situated in 3 acres of lush Hamptons woodlands. It's even featured in Vogue magazine, and many celebrities have been guests there. It's definitely not a place that you associate with violence, let alone murder. The victim is 33-year-old Sabina Roasis. She's a talented artist and is originally from Brooklyn. The member of staff who found Sabina's body immediately alerted authorities. Police got to the scene at around 12:30 p.m. and what they could tell from what they found was that Sabina met a very violent end. Authorities believe that the attack was a violent one, and they say that she was targeted by somebody who knew her. They've described it as an isolated incident, and a homicide investigation has been launched.
Went to this casino to use the bathroom in the middle of the night on a road trip, and I got the creepiest vibes there. Little did I know until posting about it on here a few days ago that an actual murder happened there in the exact same bathroom that I used. So this is the Prim Valley Casino and Resort in Prim, Nevada. I was on a road trip last week and I had to stop to charge my rental car, and unfortunately the only one nearby was in the parking lot of this casino. I got immediate red flags because it was in the middle of the night, all of the lights were on, music blasting and everything, but literally no one was there. Like, I didn't even see a single employee. I know it's not, but it looked abandoned. Like, it was almost stuck in time because everything was really old. It was really giving me backroom vibes, but I had to go to the bathroom really bad, so I started walking through the casino to try and find it. And I just kept getting such a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I started recording because it's not often that you're in a massive casino all by yourself. And so I finally find the bathroom, and when I go in, it is really creepy. Again, it was completely empty, and there was like a little stockroom to the left when you first entered, and the door was cracked open. When I got in a stall, I started panicking because I just felt like something really horrible was going to happen. So I booked it out of there, and that was that. I posted the videos I took on here a few days ago to a creepy audio, and then I got this comment. They were saying how a little girl was murdered in this exact bathroom 27 years ago. So obviously that immediately creeped me out, but it really explains why I got such bad feelings in this casino. So I started looking into it, and I found that in 1997, 7-year-old Sharice Iverson was murdered here by 18-year-old Jeremy Strohmeyer. On May 25th, 1997, little Sharice was at this casino with her dad and 14-year-old brother. The dad kind of pawned her off to her brother and told him to watch her while he gambled, but Charisse ventured off and was roaming the entire casino by herself, and she was even returned to her father several times that night by security because she was alone. And I don't know if this casino was ever busy back in the day, but now it's literally a massive ghost town. So just imagining roaming it by myself as a kid, that is so scary to me. At around 4 a.m., Jeremy Strohmeyer, his friend, 17-year-old David Cash Jr., and David's dad arrived at the casino. They were all traveling from Long Beach, California. Once there, Jeremy saw Charisse walking alone and started making playful contact with her. At some point, Charisse went into the girls' bathroom, and Jeremy followed her in. According to him, the two started playing and throwing wet, wadded-up paper towels at each other. While this was happening, Jeremy's friend David also went into the girls' bathroom, at which point he witnessed Jeremy forcibly take Charisse into a stall. And peeking in from an adjacent stall, he saw Jeremy holding one hand over Charisse's mouth while using his other hand to assault her. This is infuriating because even though David saw what was happening, he just left. He didn't report it or try to stop it. He just left. About 20 minutes later, Jeremy left the bathroom and confessed to David that he killed Charisse, but still nothing was reported. After discovering Charisse's body, an investigation began, and security footage from the casino was released on TV that showed this man wandering the casino talking to Charisse. But at this point, police didn't know who he was. But 3 days later, classmates of Jeremy's in Long Beach recognized him from the security footage and turned him into police, where he was officially arrested. Jeremy would then confess to S.A.ing Charisse, and he said that he strangled her to stop her from screaming. But while he was leaving the stall, he noticed that she was still alive, so in his own words, he twisted her head until it popped, killing her. He then put her body in a sitting position on the toilet with her feet inside the bowl. What's crazy is that his defense attorney was Leslie Abramson, who was also the lawyer of Eric Menendez. They tried arguing that he was high and drunk at the time and didn't even remember committing the crime, but ultimately he was convicted of first-degree murder amongst other things and was sentenced to 4 life terms in prison without parole. Now, as for his friend David, Charisse's family pushed for him to be charged too, at least as an accessory to murder, but Nevada police said that there wasn't enough evidence, so to this day, David has never been charged in connection to Charisse's murder, even though he fully knew it was happening, didn't stop it, and then never reported it to police. This was his disgusting response when asked how he felt about the entire thing. Basically, that he doesn't care at all, that it's helped him score with women, and that he plans to make money off of Charisse's murder. He went on to become a student at UC Berkeley, and there were so many rallies to get him expelled for his role in Charisse's murder, but university officials refused because he was never officially charged with a crime. How horrible and disgusting is that? And he's never shown any remorse either. So now looking back to when I was in that casino and that very bathroom, I just get chills. Before even knowing what took place there, it was incredibly creepy and it gave me such bad vibes. But now knowing this, it makes it even worse. So watch out if you ever end up at the Prim Valley Casino in Nevada.
The dark web, a hidden underworld of secrets, crime, and danger, is a place few dare to explore, and those who do often stumble across things they wish they hadn't. This is the story of Carl Miller, an ordinary man who uncovered something extraordinary, a kill list. Carl Miller wasn't a hacker, he wasn't a cop, he was just a curious individual poking around the dark web for answers to questions most people wouldn't dare ask. But one night, his curiosity led him to something horrifying, a kill list. But not just any list, this one was hiring hitmen to kill random, seemingly innocent people. No rhyme or reason, no motive behind the names, just cold, calculated violence for hire. With a sense of duty and dread, Carl started digging. He combed through the names, looking for any connections between the targets. Each name led him down a rabbit hole of confusion. They were ordinary people. A teacher, a mechanic, a mother of 3. No apparent link, no reason why they'd be marked for death. As Carl dug deeper, he realized the stakes were higher than he ever imagined. His investigation caught the attention of the very people behind the list, and suddenly he was in their crosshairs. If you want to know more about Carl Miller's story, then you have to listen to Kill List. You can listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Hola, soy Mímico, todos me conocen. Bueno, vengo aquí con un tema, no sé si las...
The TikToker you just saw, a woman named Manelis Zoe Rodriguez Ramirez, was found dead yesterday near the Walmart that she disappeared from a few days ago. On October 22nd, the 25-year-old Manelis went to Walmart. Apparently, she was going there to exchange a photograph she had taken with an acquaintance. A cashier that worked at the Walmart said that they saw her enter the store at around 9:30 p.m., and at the time she had been texting her fiancé. Now, her fiancé went to sleep, but when he woke up, he noticed that the last text that Manelis had sent him didn't sound like something she would say. The text message read, "I am waiting for the brother to pick him up." Now, according to some witnesses that have been interviewed by news outlets, some witnesses saw a dark-colored SUV and a gold or yellow minivan parked next to Manelis's vehicle at some point during the night. She was missing for days, and her family appeared on local news outlets begging for any answers. But just yesterday, her body was discovered near that Walmart on an isolated road. The day before Manelis's body was found, 24-year-old Angel De Jesus Rivera Sanchez was arrested and charged with 1 count of kidnapping in connection to this crime. It's unclear exactly what happened as of right now, but I'm sure as the autopsy reports and other associated information is released, there is going to be a much broader, much darker, much more disturbing picture that is painted. And rest in peace to Manelis. I hope that there is justice in this case.
In 2008, right?
Yeah.
There was a case with a Greyhound bus. Tim McLean was going from Edmonton to Winnipeg. This happened in Canada.
Okay, I was gonna say, where the fuck is that?
All the witnesses say he was in the back of the bus with his hoodie on, headphones on. He wasn't really focusing on anything, wasn't talking to anybody, right? A couple hours later, on a different stop, this guy, Vincent Lee, gets on. At first, he ended up sitting in the front of the bus, away from everybody else, and he ends up going all the way to the back of the bus and sits right next to Tim McLean. He didn't really think too much of it, right? Until, out of nowhere, Vincent pulled out a knife, and he just started stabbing his chest and his neck. The passengers start freaking out, and the bus driver pulls over. They all rush to get off. The bus driver tries to get back on to help Tim. It's already too late. Like, people start calling 911 and stuff. That's when Vincent starts cutting his head off, takes it and start like showing it to everybody.
Like, look what the fuck I did.
And he starts cutting little pieces off. First he eats his heart, and then he starts eating the rest of his body as well.
Wait, in front of the cops, or he's been doing that?
He's in front of the cops, bro. He obviously stops and gets arrested. He ends up obviously on trial and shit. March 2009 mark him as mentally insane, and they can't put him in jail. The reason why was because he said Tim was a demon and that God had told him to kill him.
It sounds like some schizophrenia.
But then over time he was slowly given more freedom. He was allowed to a different city with supervision.
Bro, don't tell me some shit's gonna happen.
And in 2017 he was set free, and still to this day
he's free.
They gave him the right to legally change his name.
So you're telling me if he had moved to the US,
somebody could have passed him, bro, and they would have never known.
Imagine.
I am sexually attracted to some kids. I just kind of like fell into this pit of despair. And
the man you just saw in that video was 27-year-old Hugh Nelson. And just a few years ago in the United Kingdom, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison. This was the very first time that somebody in the United Kingdom was sentenced for a crime like this, for generating AI child abuse images for dissemination on the internet. Now, in his interviews, Hugh admitted that he used a program called DAZ 3D to transform normal images of children into graphic abuse images, and he wasn't just doing this for himself. As it turns out, Hugh is connected to the underground pedophile network in the United Kingdom, and he actually had a customer base. Yes, other predators would contact Hugh. They would send him photographs of children, sometimes relatives or children that they knew, and Hugh would then use his AI program to transform those innocent images into graphic CSAM. And this wasn't just your average deepfake type technology. Hugh was creating full 3D generated renders of these innocent children and rendering them out in horrific circumstances. Apparently, Hugh was able to get away with this for 18 months, and every single month he was making $5,000 from this AI-generated CP-CSAM empire. But he got caught when he was approached by an undercover officer, and I'm going to read you this quote from the article. Hugh told the undercover officer that he charged £80 to create a new character using images that he provided. And he then went on to tell the officer, quote, "I've done beatings, smotherings, hangings, drownings, beheadings, necro, beast, the list goes on," with a laughing emoji. This is one of the sickest men in the United Kingdom, and I'm glad they got him off the streets. But only God knows how many of these people are out there right now doing this exact same thing that have yet to be caught. If you want to join me as I expose pedophiles and other criminals like this, listen to my podcast, The Conspiracy Files, available on all platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Or you can watch the video version of the podcast on my YouTube channel, The Conspiracy Files.
There's a killer on the loose in Montana who viciously murdered this man while he slept in his tent at a remote campsite. His injuries were so gruesome that at first police thought it was a bear attack, but now it's turned into a murder investigation with no clue who the killer is. So on October 10th, 35-year-old Dustin Jersom left his home in Belgrade, Montana for a weekend camping trip with a friend. He drove off in his black 2013 Ford F-150, and this would be the last time that his family would ever hear from him again. He made plans to meet up with a friend the next day, but he never showed, and whatever happened happened after this has yet to be explained. When he failed to show up, his friends started looking for him where he might have been camping. This was near Big Sky in the Moose Creek area. At around 10 a.m. the next day, his friends stumbled across his campsite, which was about 2.5 miles up Moose Creek Road. And when he opened the tent, he found Dustin's bloodied body. His injuries were so gruesome and intense that he thought Dustin was attacked by a bear. So when he called 911, that's what he said, that he thought his friend was attacked by a bear. Police, as well as the Montana Department of Fish and Wildlife, brought in experts in bear attacks to investigate the scene, but they all found no signs of bear activity in the area. And after examining Dustin's body, they found that he was actually brutally murdered. An autopsy concluded that he died as a result of multiple chop wounds, and it was described as especially vicious. At this point, police don't know what the murder weapon was, but they say that whatever it was hard enough to cause significant damage to a skull. So far, there are 0 suspects in this case, and it almost appears to be completely random. And what's scary is police have said that they don't know whether or not there is a threat to the community. So if you're out there in the Montana woods, you need to stay vigilant and pay attention to your surroundings. The campsite where Dustin was murdered is pretty remote, but it is said to be somewhat popular amongst other campers and especially hunters. That area is said to have little to no cell phone service, which makes this all that much scarier. Police are asking anyone who's in the area who might have seen Dustin or his truck or any suspicious activity to come forward. They're also asking anyone who might have footage from game or trail cameras or any dash cam footage to send it in, even if it might seem insignificant to you. And to anyone in the Big Sky area or anyone camping or planning to camp, please be careful, because there's someone on the loose who is capable of committing such a heinous crime, seemingly without leaving any evidence behind.
What on earth happened to those Beaumont children? Some are calling this Australia's most unsettling and disturbing case. Jane, Anna and Grant were children from South Australia. They were 9, 7 and 4 years old. They had a nice life and lived with their mum and dad near Adelaide, near the beach. Now this was a very popular beach and one that they'd visited many times before. It was the 25th of January 1966 and this summer was a hot one. Australia, by the way, have their summer when we have our winter, in case that was confusing. On the day in question, the children's dad, Jim, was going away with work and dropped them off at the beach before he went. This is something that he'd done numerous times before. The beach was called Glenelg Beach and it was very popular with tourists. He then went off on his work trip while the mum stayed at home. The kids made it back from the beach and the following day they were keen to go again. They had a really good time there. So they asked their mum if they could go and she said that they'd obviously have to get the bus because their dad was away. He couldn't take them this time. They hopped on the bus at around 9 a.m. and told their mum that they'd be back around lunchtime. Now they were seen by a postman that they knew all walking together looking very happy that morning. However, they never made it home. Their dad Jim came home at around 3 p.m. that day and the children were still not back. Worried, the parents rushed to the beach to try and look for them themselves, but no luck. They then contacted family and friends, but none of them had heard from the kids either. The parents even went round the local area knocking on doors to see if anyone had heard from them. That evening they went to the police station to report their children missing. Officers immediately scoured the local area. They even notified the airports just in case the children had been abducted. Witnesses reported seeing the children with a tall man with light brown hair in his mid-30s wearing Speedos. The man had reportedly also said something strange to someone sat nearby. He apparently asked if anyone had been near to the belongings of the children because some of their money had been stolen. Another witness again reported to have seen the man with the children a couple of hours after this. Interestingly, when questioned, Jane's mum said that she'd heard one of the children make a passing comment that Jane had a boyfriend at the beach, and she'd obviously not thought about this until they'd now gone missing. Years and years went by with absolutely no clue as to what happened to these poor children. Then in March 1986, there was a strange discovery. 3 discarded suitcases were found with loads and loads of newspaper clippings all about the children. Scribbled in red pen all over were kind of like annotations talking about the case. People were wondering if this had been done by the killer. It turned out the clippings just came from an amateur sleuth who was really interested in the case and wanted to find out what had happened. This person then passed away and their relatives got rid of the suitcase full of the clippings. Then a woman called Sue came forward with some information. She said that in the 70s she'd seen a granddad and granddaughter arguing at a football game. The little girl was crying and he then dragged her out the stadium. Now it turned out that the pair weren't related at all. I don't know how Sue found out this, but apparently she'd found this out. And she never saw them again. Police wondered if this had been one of the Beaumont children with their abductor. The man also reportedly looked suspiciously like the police sketches of that mystery man. Horrifically, in the years following this tragic case, the family were plagued with hoax letters. These led to nothing but dead ends. Tragically, Nancy, the children's mother, passed away in a nursing home in 2019, never knowing what happened to her children. I can't imagine losing one of your children or one of your children going missing, let alone all three. The mystery prevails, and this case is the longest running missing persons case in Australian history.
These are the most unusual deaths ever. In 1814, a vat at the Horseshoe Brewery in London holding 610,000 liters of beer ruptured. It set off a chain reaction of beer vats, all rupturing one after another, ultimately resulting in a flood of nearly 1.5 million liters of beer rushing through the streets. It left a huge trail of destruction in its path, including the bodies of 8 people. And 5 of those people were actually at a funeral when the flood struck. This is just horrible, and death by beer flood sounds like an enormously unpleasant way to go. Next, on July 2nd, 1951, Mary Hardy Reeser decided to smoke a cigarette before she headed to bed. She sat down in a chair with it and relaxed, but the next morning, she was discovered in a very shocking state. She had burned to ash. All that remained was 1 foot still in its slipper, and her skull, which had shrunk to a teacup. This was a case of spontaneous combustion in which a person just randomly catches fire. Her house was barely touched by the fire, and there was nothing around her that could burn. This case remains one of the most shocking and confusing ever, because this woman just exploded in flames out of nowhere. Next, Hans Steininger died by his own beard. Hans's beard was over 6 feet long, and he typically kept it rolled up and stored in a leather pouch. On the day he didn't tuck it away, a fire broke out in his hometown. Hans ran from the fire and tripped on his beard in the process, and he either broke his neck or failed to escape the blaze after falling. A 15-year-old girl named Donna lived with her father, and ever since her mother died, she depended on her father for everything. One day, Donna's father left for a business trip and said he wouldn't be back until later that night. Later that day, Donna got home from school and watched TV, and when the clock struck midnight, she noticed her father wasn't back, so she went to bed. That night, Donna had a dream where she was standing on a busy highway. She then saw her father trying to yell something to her. She couldn't hear him, but noticed he looked sad and was desperately trying to communicate with her. She could barely make out what he was saying, but it sounded like, "Don't open the door." Donna then woke up to someone ringing the doorbell. She then went to the door and looked through the peephole and saw her father's face outside. He was staring right at her, and the doorbell was still ringing. She was about to open the door when she looked through the peephole again and noticed her father's eyes were wide open and he looked terrified. The doorbell then continued ringing as Donna begged her dad to answer her. She then yelled, "I'm not opening the door until you answer me." The doorbell kept ringing, but her father refused to answer her. Donna then sat in the corner next to the door crying and listening to the doorbell ringing. She then fell asleep and woke up in the morning. She then got up and looked through the peephole, and her father was still there. She then opened the door and saw something truly horrifying. Her father's severed head was hanging from a nail above the door, and there was a note attached to the doorbell that said, "Clever girl."
You ever heard about something called Ghost Watch?
I want to say yes, but I don't know.
I probably just triggered some nostalgia horror for certain people, especially for our older heads. Ghost Watch was a BBC Halloween special that aired in the UK back in 1992, so mad long ago, bro. It was so terrifying that it was actually banned from airing on TV ever again, and it also caused a death. It had a bunch of BBC presenters and reporters trying to get evidence on the existence of ghosts. At the time, it was very unique because it was live. They were investigating a house in which the Early family was claiming that they were being haunted by this malevolent spirit, which they called Mr. Pipes, and they start hearing actual bangs around the house.
We will stay with you. What was that? Where are we going?
And Suzanne ends up speaking in like a demonic voice.
Stop it! Stop it, Susie! Get out. Get out if you don't want to be here. You just mess things up.
It seems fake though.
This whole thing was actually fake. In the beginning, it actually played a disclaimer saying what you're about to see is staged. But when people tuned in, they tuned in mid-showing, so they didn't see the beginning. And also, the calls, right? There would be like an automated message saying how whatever you're watching right now is fake. But since there was thousands of people calling the studio, the line got jammed, so all they heard was literally just white noise. So they thought what the fuck was happening on the show was real. Like I mentioned, there was a death caused by this. So there was an 18-year-old kid named Martin. While he was watching this, he started acting weird, curled up into a ball while never taking his eyes off the screen, as if he was being hypnotized by the show. So keep in mind also,
this killer accidentally pocket-dialed his victim and recorded a part of the murder. It was the 28th of February 2014. Emily Lambert was a 30-year-old third-grade teacher from Texas. She had two daughters, aged 4 and 5, called Eden and Danica, with her ex-partner. Now, they'd split up, but they were on good terms, and she had just met a new guy who she'd started a relationship with. This was Robert Early. On the weekend in question, she was going to visit Robert. He was away with work, roughly an 8-hour drive away, and she'd planned to go and stay with him. Emily's parents said they'd look after the little girls for a while she did this. She was due to be home on the Sunday at the end of the weekend. Now, Emily eventually did turn up to meet Robert in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and he was temporarily staying in a hotel at this point. Alarm bells rang the following day when Robert contacted Emily's parents. He was apparently concerned for her well-being and asked if they'd heard of Emily. He claimed that the pair had got into an argument the night before and that Emily had stormed out and left him. Now, Emily's mum was really worried as she hadn't heard of her, so she told Robert to call police. Authorities made their way over to the hotel and were alarmed by the fact that Emily's car was still parked outside the hotel. The phone was also still in the room. Robert told authorities that the two of them had gone to the Blue Cactus bar, which was attached to the hotel, the night before. Robert said that they'd gone there just after 9 p.m. and eventually had a little tiff over Emily flirting with other men there. He said that then Emily stormed out, and he said that he'd been pacing up and down, worried sick all night. He said she never came back to the hotel room. Now, police started looking into whether there was any CCTV footage of around the area, and they were in luck, there was. Cameras captured Emily leave the bar and Robert follow shortly after, and then kind of loiter around for a bit. Authorities also decided to question other guests in the hotel to see if they'd seen or heard anything. It turned out that the person staying in the room next door to Emily and Robert had actually heard an argument. The timeline didn't add up though. This was after Robert had said that the pair had parted ways. Robert had claimed that he'd gone back to the hotel room alone, so someone wasn't telling the truth. Robert's story obviously didn't match up with what others had heard, so he changed his story. He said that they did have an argument in the room and then Emily had left, and he saw her get into a mystery white van outside and then followed that van. He said he drove for miles and miles chasing them, and then that the driver got out, Emily got out, and so did he. Apparently there was then an altercation where the mystery driver of this white van had hit Emily over the head by accident. Robert then apparently just drove away and failed to tell the authorities any of this when he first reported her missing. Now, officers then had Robert drive them to where this had apparently taken place, and lo and behold, they found Emily's dead body. She was taken for an autopsy so that they could have a look at any more clues as to what happened. Meanwhile, officers searched Robert's electronic devices and they found something absolutely shocking. He'd accidentally pocket-dialed Emily at the most crucial point in this timeline, when the murder was taking place. Captured on the answer phone to Emily was the sound of the argument between the pair, including Emily's own screams. So Robert again changed his story now, but this time there's no random white van or white van driver. Robert admitted to attacking Emily by kicking and punching her repeatedly until she went unconscious. He then loaded her into his car and started driving. Horrifically, she woke up during the journey. He tied a rope around her neck and attacked her with an air pump that was in his car. He then dumped her body. Now, Robert tried again to change his story. He literally just can't stop changing this story, but he was ultimately convicted of murder and was given life without parole.
However, coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish, a slight elderly man with grey hair No one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
These are videos humans were never meant to see. Okay, so we all remember this viral video of a girl on a plane, completely freaking out saying she wants to get off because the person she just saw wasn't human. But what if I told you some guy just did the same exact thing a couple days ago? Just watch this video and let's talk about it. So yeah, that guy claims that he saw a shapeshifter on the plane, and he instantly got up freaking out and tried to open the plane door while they're in the air. This video is absolutely insane, and what's going on recently with all these videos of people on planes seeing shapeshifters and things that aren't human?
This horrific shooting took the lives of 3 people, including 2 children. A tragic shooting took place at the end of May this year that stunned Pennsylvania. 2 young boys were innocently playing in their garden with kittens when they were killed by gunfire. The 2 young victims were brothers called Jesus and Sebastian Perez Salome. They were only 8 and 9 years old, and their mum was working at a shop nearby when this occurred. She actually heard the gunshots while she was at work, and she was completely unaware that her boys were anything to do with this. When she found out, she was in complete shock. A 19-year-old called Joshua was also killed in the incident, and he was apparently the target due to an alleged argument. A 33-year-old neighbour was also hit by a stray bullet and had to undergo surgery. Police arrested Ivan Rosero in North Philadelphia. Alex Santos and a 16-year-old male were also arrested. It's believed that the district attorney is seeking the death penalty for the shooters.
Everybody needs to watch this video. Okay, so we all remember this dress that broke the internet. Some people think it's white and gold, others think it's blue and black. But the man behind this dress actually has been charged with the attempted murder of his wife. 38-year-old Keir Johnston allegedly committed an 11-year-old campaign of domestic violence actions and control against his wife, all leading up to a moment last March in which he allegedly attempted to kill her by pinning her to the ground and compressing her neck. Keir Johnston has denied all allegations against him at this time, and the attempted murder case will have its preliminary hearing before a trial in 2024. This is actually crazy because this is one of the first things that ever go viral on the internet, and the person behind it was literally just charged with the attempted murder of his wife. So do you think Keir Johnston tried to kill his wife? Or do you think he's innocent? Let me know your opinions on this whole case in the comments, because this is absolutely mind-blowing to me, and I bet it is to a lot of you guys also. And one last time, is the dress white and gold or blue and black? These are videos you need to see before you die. Okay, so did you know when a whale dies, it sometimes falls to the bottom of the ocean floor called a whale fall, and their corpse creates a complex ecosystem for countless deep-sea organisms? Well, the video I'm about to show you is exactly that, which a research submarine discovered, and it shows many organisms enjoying this whale's homemade ecosystem. Here's the video, and it's crazy.
Whale fall. Here we go, baby. Okay,
yeah, dinner is served.
Oh,
that's not bacterial, man.
No, they are worms. Look at the blubber on the right side.
It's not even digested all the way. This is so cool.
Definitely, where food is so limited, I would imagine scavenging is a great strategy. Your food doesn't run away.
So yeah, isn't that video so fascinating? It's crazy to me how life can just end for one, but even after death, they can still help. These are photos that go unseen by most people, part 1. Up first is what a gasoline container looks like underneath a gas station. And let me guess, some of you thought the gas was just unlimited at gas stations. Well, it's not, and it's actually stored in these giant containers underneath the gas station. Next up, if you're a boy, you definitely shaved. But did you know this is what the inner workings of shaving cream looks like? This is actually crazy, and if you didn't, now you do. Next up is what the inside of a bungee cord looks like. I've never been on a bungee cord, and I don't think I ever will, but just looking at this photo is kind of unsettling for some reason. I think it's because there is so much little cords all next to each other. Next up is what a movie theater looks like with no seats or screen in it. This is so unsettling, and it looks like the opening scene of a horror movie. Next up, did you ever wonder what the inside of a bowling pin looks like? Well, if so, it's actually just wood. This completely blew my mind when I looked this up, because I never knew what was in bowling pins, but I would have never guessed it was wood. So, who else's mind is blown?
Police officer crushed my head and killed me while I was shouting that I couldn't breathe. My name is George Floyd. I am a 46-year-old African-American man. It all started when I entered a convenience store. I was accused of using a counterfeit bill for a purchase, which led to a call to the police. When the officers arrived, I was arrested and handcuffed. That's when my life took a turn. They pinned me to the ground, face down. I tried to cooperate as best as I could, but my life was in their hands. Derek Chauvin, one of the officers, came and knelt on me, pressing his knee against my neck. I found myself trapped, unable to move, to breathe. I cried that I couldn't breathe repeatedly for 10 minutes, which felt like an eternity to me. I felt life gradually leaving me. My vision darkened, and I lost consciousness. The last thing I felt was fear and pain, but also a profound sense of injustice. People took to the streets to demand justice for me and to denounce police brutality and the systemic racism that has existed for far too long.
Kidnapped and killed many children to eat them. My name is Albert Fish, and I'm an American man who committed atrocious crimes from the 1920s to 1936. One of my most infamous crimes was that of little Grace Budd. I pretended to be a man named Frank Howard and convinced her family to let me take Grace with me to a supposed job. They trusted me. They suspected nothing. I took her to a secluded little cabin I'd prepared for the occasion. Once there, I revealed my true nature. I tied up the poor child. She cried and screamed, but that only added to my sick pleasure. I subjected Grace to unimaginable torture, abominable sexual abuse. Her suffering was my delight. After days of terror for her, I finally ended her life. I committed the most heinous act imaginable. I killed and dismembered Grace Budd and ate her body parts. Her mutilated body was an offering to my inner demons. After this horrible crime, I wrote a detailed letter to the Budd family, describing the horror I had inflicted on their precious Grace. Yet this crime was only a small part of all the atrocities I had committed. I was then arrested and confessed all my crimes to the police, leading to my execution in the electric chair in 1936.
When this man experienced a break-in, he killed the intruder and then lived with his mummified corpse. Bruce Roberts lived in Sydney, and he was known for being a hoarder. However, no one could have guessed one incredibly disturbing possession he was keeping at his home. Neighbours described Bruce as reclusive. His home was so full of junk that you could not see through the windows. When locals in 2017 hadn't heard from Bruce for a while, they called police to do a welfare check. When police managed to enter the house, they found Bruce deceased inside. However, it would be another year before they realised there was actually another body in the property. Police would have probably found this body if this was a normal house, but this wasn't a normal house. It was actually when cleaners were brought in to prep Bruce's house for sale that they found the other body. This was the body of 39-year-old Shane Snellman. Now, Shane had apparently been released from prison in 2002 and had gone to Bruce's house to rob it for money for drugs. A coroner found that Bruce had shot the intruder, covered his body with a rug, and then kept it in his spare bedroom for 15 years. He ended up using 70 bottles of air freshener to try and hide the smell of rotting flesh. This TV show ended up playing a part in and even filming a deadly shooting. The TV show To Catch a Predator had one aim: to catch online predators. The show aired from 2004 to 2007 and was very successful in terms of ratings. The production company hired actors to play the role of children on the internet and would lure in child predators. Posing as children, they would arrange to meet the adult males. Then when the adults showed up, a camera crew lay in wait. The presenter, Chris Hansen, would confront the males, and then ultimately they would be arrested. By 2007, the show had helped to catch hundreds of potential predators. They had got 36 guilty verdicts. In 2006, Bill Conrad was an assistant district attorney from Texas. His friends described him as reserved and he had never been married. In this particular sting, a house in Texas was fitted with live video feeds. High-tech equipment was installed and police officers stayed in the house waiting to lure in potential predators. Now, weeks prior to this, Bill had actually been talking to a minor online. He'd been pretending to be a college student, but eventually slipped up and revealed his true identity. The TV show in Texas tried luring Bill into the house, but they failed, so they took matters into their own hands. Chris Hansen and the crew turned up at Bill's house, ready to catch him unaware. However, Bill wasn't answering the door. Police ended up calling a SWAT team in. As they forced entry into the house, Bill shot himself in the head. One of the officers reportedly said into the camera, "That'll make good TV."
The story of the preppy rapist will infuriate you, and it demonstrates just how power and privilege can lead to complete injustice. This man's name right here is Alex Kelly, and he was born in Connecticut in the year 1967. And before he even turned 20, he was charged with 2 extremely disturbing crimes. Over a 4-day period in Connecticut, he was charged with committing 2 different rapes. First, he allegedly assaulted a 16-year-old girl from Stanford, and he also kidnapped one of his victims. He offered them a ride home and then took them somewhere and assaulted them. But in the year 1987, just before his trial was set to start, Alex escaped the country. Yes, somehow he evaded justice and he fled to Europe. And for 7 whole years, Alex was able to live in Europe. He faced no repercussions for his actions, and his parents even sent him money and helped hide him. One day, though, law enforcement knocked on his parents' door, raided their house, and found photos of the family with Alex in Europe from the previous year. And at that point, they were arrested and charged with obstruction of justice, and Alex finally came back to America. After a lengthy trial process, some of his charges were downgraded, but he was eventually sentenced to 32 years in prison. But after just 8 years, he was up for parole. He applied for parole, but they denied it. And at this parole hearing, he said that he realized he was hyper-competitive and self-centered, and he realized that the world was bigger than himself, which I think is just so douchey. But just 10 years into his 32-year sentence, Alex was released in the year 2007. And I feel like that was very, very quickly. So many other people would not get released 10 years into a 32-year sentence, but Alex was. And if I didn't iterate this enough before, the crimes that he committed were absolutely horrific. The victims were completely traumatized for the rest of their lives. And some of the details I just can't share on TikTok because they were so graphic, but you can go look them up and research this case if you want to yourself. But yeah, after sexually assaulting 2 underage girls, kidnapping one of them, fleeing justice for 7 years, he only had to serve 10 years in prison. But nowadays, Alex works as a skydiving instructor. He has a skydiving service. So if you want to go skydive with a rapist, hit this company up.
Could you get away with a serious crime because one of your other personalities was to blame? Well, this man did get acquitted because psychiatrists believed that his other personalities were to blame for his crimes. Billy Milligan had trauma from an early age. His dad unalived himself when Billy was just 4 years old. His mum then remarried and his stepdad abused him. He SA'd him and threatened to bury Billy alive if he ever told anyone. Over the years, Billy developed 9 different personalities of different ages and genders. Some of the personalities began to get violent. In 1977, Billy threatened a female student with a gun. He lured her into the woods, SA'd her and robbed her. Just days later, he struck again. He attacked a total of 3 women. Luckily, after the 3rd attack, the victim recognised him from police mugshots. Police actually had photos of Billy on file from a 1975 robbery. Billy was arrested. Now, police remarked that while he was in custody, sometimes when talking to Billy, it seemed like you were talking to different people. Sometimes he referred to himself as Phil, sometimes as David, sometimes he spoke with different accents, and other times he claimed to be Jewish. When a psychiatrist referred to him as Billy, Billy stated, "Billy's asleep, this is David." It was determined that Billy had about 10 different personalities. They ranged from a 3-year-old girl to a man named Arthur who was responsible for clearing up the mess of all of the other different personalities. It became apparent that 23-year-old Reagan was the personality responsible for robbing the victims. Now, Reagan struggled with empathy. A 19-year-old lesbian personality was responsible for the SAs. It was believed that Billy, the core personality, had been asleep for 7 years while all of this was going on. Billy was eventually found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was transferred to a hospital for the criminally insane in 1980. In 1991, he was released and he passed away from cancer in 2014.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
Groomed by a man more than 3 times her age, Kellyanne Bates was only 14 when she met the man that would end her life in what still remains one of the most horrific murders in the UK. Quick trigger warning, some of the details in the video are quite graphic and hard to listen to. James Patterson Smith was an extremely violent man. On the outside, he looked perfectly normal and was actually described by friends as well-groomed and house-proud. He'd been in a few relationships before meeting Kelly, but they'd all ended due to his violent temper. He'd even tried to drown 2 of his previous girlfriends. And at the age of 46, he met 14-year-old Kelly while she was babysitting for some of his friends. Their relationship was kept a secret by Kelly and James for 2 years, but at the age of 16, when she left school, she moved in with him. When Kelly's parents finally met James, they were shocked by his age, and Kelly's mum did everything she could to try and persuade Kelly to leave the relationship. As the months went on, Kelly became more and more withdrawn, and eventually all contact between her and her family stopped. On April 16, 1996, the police received a call from James saying that he'd accidentally drowned his girlfriend in the bath. When they arrived at the house, they found blood throughout the rooms and Kelly's naked body was in the bedroom. It became quite clear that this was not an accidental death. Kelly had drowned in the bath, but only after enduring up to a month of torture at the hands of James. Kelly had over 150 injuries in total. She'd been tied up with a ligature around her neck, she had burns to her legs, a fractured arm, multiple stab wounds from knives, scissors and forks. Her hands were crushed, she had stab wounds inside her mouth, she'd been partially scalped, and she had 2 empty eye sockets. Kelly had endured all of these injuries in the weeks leading up to her death, before finally being dragged to the bathroom and drowned. James was quickly arrested, but denied murder, saying that Kelly had inflicted all these injuries on herself to make him look bad. He then changed his story and said that it was him, but that Kelly had taunted him and dared him to do it. It only took the jury 1 hour to find him guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 20 years. In January 2023, he actually became eligible for parole, but it was denied and he remains behind bars.
This former Degrassi actor is one of the worst pedophiles in Canadian history. Trigger warning, this story is extremely disturbing. It's honestly one of the worst I've read about in recent history, so viewer discretion is advised. This is Bird Dickens, born in 1971 in Ontario, Canada. Bird was an actor, and he was known for portraying a character named Scott Smith on Degrassi High. On the show, he played an abusive boyfriend, and in real life, he was just so much worse than that. A lot of Degrassi fans will remember him from his role in this show, but he also acted in a number of other productions. So after his role ended on Degrassi High, in 1991, 3 different women claimed that he had sexually assaulted them. He was charged with these 3 rapes, but he was acquitted of all charges eventually. But the story got so much darker from there. In 2004, he met his future partner Dylan Ann McEwen, and in 2016, it was discovered that he had been engaging in deplorable BDSM activities with her that involved minors. And when police executed a search warrant in April of 2016 of the couple's home, they found over 1,000 images of CP, images and videos. And each of those individual images depicted some of the most grotesque CP ever recorded. But in 2003, before he met his future wife, he was actually offered a night with a minor by a girl's mother. Apparently, the mother took nude photographs of her own daughter and mailed them to Bird, and Bird then took the girl and her mother to the movies, and then engaged in sexual activity with the young daughter while her mother sat in the same room and watched. This is just disgusting. So this investigation by the police actually uncovered thousands of CP images that were shared between Dickens and his wife, and apparently he was a major member on a lot of BDSM and fetish forums online where he found, quote, like-minded individuals that he would swap these files with. And when the police actually went through these files, I feel so bad for the people that have to actually look through this content. The case got even darker. Some of these images and videos actually showed Bird himself engaging in sexual activity with minors. He recorded these sick videos, took these photos himself, and went online and shared these images with people on the internet. Some of his screen names included the names Retro Deviant, Bird Dog, and Sir Dirk. But during this entire investigation, he continued to work in the film industry. He worked on various productions, and nobody knew that this investigation was underway. Eventually, though, in the year 2018, he was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison, but there's no real justice in the story because in 2020, he was released on bail. That's right, for all of that thousands of CP images, some of which depicted himself abusing children, he only had to serve about 2.5 years in prison.
In 1912, a young boy went missing. And when he was finally reunited with his mother, it seemed like it was not the same boy. So 4-year-old Bobby Dunbar disappeared by a lake on a family vacation in 1912. The only clue found was his hat, which led many to believe he had been kidnapped. The next year, in 1913, a man is seen traveling with a boy that looks very similar to Bobby. He was arrested, but he insisted the boy was not Bobby. He was a boy named Bruce Anderson. But the police didn't listen and returned the boy to Bobby Dunbar's mother. At first, the mother is not convinced the boy is Bobby Dunbar. But she claims that the boy has similar birthmarks to Bobby, so it must be the same child. But when she sends him to play with the neighborhood kids, they don't recognize Bobby either. The boy lived with the Dunbars for the rest of his life, went on to have a family of his own, and passed away in 1966. And almost 100 years after this took place, Bobby Dunbar's granddaughters insisted a DNA test be done. And it proved what they feared to be true. The boy was Bruce Anderson. He shared no DNA with the Dunbar family. It turns out part of the reason he was not reunited with his real mother was there was a rumor that Bruce Anderson's mother was a prostitute and was not viewed favorably by the police. For more creepy history, make sure you're following along.
Judith Barcy was an American child actress with a promising, successful life ahead of her, but that life was cruelly taken away at just age 10 by her own father. Judith was first introduced to acting in 1984 when she landed a role in Fatal Vision. Chillingly, she was cast as Kimberly MacDonald, who was a little girl that was murdered by her father. She then went on to appear in over 70 commercials and TV shows, including Jaws, Cheers, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and she played the voice of Ducky in The Land Before Time.
Mine is Ducky. Yep, that is what it is. Yep, yep, yep.
While she looked like a perfectly happy child on the outside, she was actually experiencing a really difficult home life. Her father, Joseph, an immigrant who had moved to the US in the 50s, was abusing alcohol and was becoming really abusive to Judith and her mother. As Judith's success increased, he became more and more angry and resentful. He even threatened Judith with a knife once when she went to film Jaws, saying that if she didn't come back, he'd slit her throat. He even expressed to friends on multiple occasions that he was going to kill his wife. And on one of his friends saying, "What about the little one?" he said, "I'd have to kill her too." He often told Maria that he would kill her and Judith, saying that he'd either slit their throats or burn the house down with them inside. During the abuse in May 1988, Judith actually broke down in front of her agent. She was crying hysterically, saying that she didn't want to go home, and she was referred to a child psychologist. Child Protective Services were then involved after the psychologist finding evidence of severe emotional and mental abuse against Judith. However, the case was dropped after Judith's mother, Maria, saying that she was starting divorce proceedings against Joseph and that she was renting an apartment where she was going to take Judith to safety. But those divorce proceedings never began and Maria stayed in the family home. On July 27th, a gunshot was heard by a neighbour. Maria had recently confided in this neighbour, saying, "I can't leave, he'll come after us and kill us, and he said that he'll burn the house down." On hearing this gunshot, the neighbour immediately knew that he'd followed through with his threats, and she dialed 911 and then ran towards the house. Emergency services arrived, but it was already too late. Maria and Judith were both found in separate rooms of the house. They'd been shot and set on fire. Joseph was found in the basement with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. After her death, Judith lived on through her acting. The Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven were both released after Judith died. Her signature line as Ducky, "Yep, yep, yep," is inscribed on her tombstone, and the song that was played at the end of All Dogs Go to Heaven, called Love Survives, was dedicated to Judith's memory.
Colleen Ballinger, aka Miranda Sings, is allegedly a groomer. But are any of these allegations grounded in reality? Let's go through a quick timeline and examine exactly what she's accused of doing. So if you don't know who Colleen Ballinger, aka Miranda Sings is, she's a wildly popular entertainer. And like this article states, because of her goofy over-the-top persona, her content mainly appeals to young children and teenagers. That's why these allegations are disturbing. Colleen has said and done some somewhat troubling things in the past, but it wasn't until recently when all of this came out. So all of this was brought into the public eye when a person named Adam McIntyre really brought this up. He talked about it on YouTube, he made a huge Twitter thread, and let's go through quickly some of these allegations. So Adam was in a group chat with Colleen and a number of other fans who were minors at the time, and I'm just going to show you some screenshots. These are some weird messages that she would say in this group chat. I mean, right here you can see her talking about sex toys with minors. Here's another screenshot from the chat where she's asking the group, which once again includes minors, to talk about their periods and their bloody underwear. Right here, she's asking an underage fan if they're a virgin, also asking another fan who's underage what their favorite position is. And I think that Colleen used this group chat to vent way too much about her personal life, like right here she's talking about the disintegration of her relationship. Keep in mind this is a chat which involves impressionable minors. And I mean, just constantly saying strange stuff like this. So in Adam's YouTube video, he goes through all of this. He talks about how Colleen allegedly didn't pay him for work. She allegedly stole content and ideas from him, and she even sent him a pair of her own panties when he was a minor. Which, admittedly, I will say is very, very strange. But then we get into the whole live stage show thing that Colleen does. In the last few weeks, a ton of people on TikTok have come forward and posted about their experiences which they found to be traumatizing at the Miranda Sings shows, including this traumatizing experience that a fan had on stage when Colleen invited her up to perform, and she played a loud fart noise and basically embarrassed this girl in front of the entire crowd. She had no idea that this was planned, and apparently it was really, really impactful to her mental health in a very negative way. There's also this really, really strange thing where Colleen invites young boys, I'm talking about children, on stage, and basically invites them to reach into her pants to grab something. And I mean, just look at the expression on her face. I just think it's really odd. And this is something that she's done many, many times, and she actually felt like it was so okay to do this that she made tweets about it, inviting people to come experience this for themselves. There was also another show where she pretended that a young child was pregnant, and even stated at one point on video that she smelled fertile. Which, once again, I don't think is very appropriate to be saying to a child. She also recently released this response video to all these allegations, saying that everyone's just overhyping it and she's basically denying everything that she's charged with. And I don't know, I need your guys' honest opinions in the comments section. Do you think this truly was unintentional? Let me know, because some of these allegations are truly bizarre.
So Spotify just released Kim Kardashian's true crime podcast. There's a lot of interesting conversations happening right now in the true crime community, so I have a couple thoughts on this. The series is about Kim Kardashian Esquire diving into the story of Kevin Keith, who has a really tragic story. So in 1994, a masked intruder showed up to a family home in Ohio and shot 6 of the family members, killing 3 of them. Kevin Keith was found guilty of the murders by an all-white jury despite no physical evidence tying him to the crime. He's currently sitting in prison for life without parole. My first impression was that this is such a sad and interesting story, and such a choice for the cover art to be just a photo of Kim. I kind of get it because her face sells and she really wants this story to get out there, but most true crime podcasts have like a photo of the person or of something indicative of the story. So it just kind of struck me as odd the first time I saw it. The first episode also is obviously about the case, but it spends a lot of time also talking about the reason that Kim got into law. Obviously, she has the ties through her father, but it gets into why she got into overturning wrongful convictions. Right now, the true crime space is really littered with projects that feel like borderline exploitation, and it can be really hard to find a piece of content that doesn't feel like it's just exploiting the family members of people involved. But I will say, I think this does a good job of Kim using her platform to get a story out there that would otherwise go largely ignored. Let me know if you've listened to this.